Is there room over here? Good morning and welcome everyone. We gather this morning to remember and celebrate the life of Alan Herbert Rydberg. And one of the most profound ways that we celebrate a life is by gathering and telling stories. It helps us to remember someone and honor them, and it also helps us to tend our grief. And so much of today's service this morning is going to be sharing stories and remembrances. We have some designated storytellers who will come forward, and then once they have finished, I will invite you, if there's anyone else that would like to come up and to share something, to do so. And after that, we'll have some prayers, as is fitting. And then we will close with the hymn, Be Thou My Vision, and then the family invites you to go downstairs for a luncheon down in Canterbury Hall. But to start, Dean asked me to read one of Alan's favorite poems, and it's by W.B. Yeats, called The Stolen Child. Where dips the rocky highland of Sleuthwood in the lake, there lies a leafy island where flapping herons wake the drowsy water rats. There we've hid our fairy vats, full of berries and of reddest stolen cherries. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Where the wave of moonlight glosses the dim gray sands with light, far off by furthest Rosses, we foot it all the night, weaving olden dances, mingling hands and mingling glances, till the moon has taken flight. To and fro we leap and chase the frothy bubbles, while the world is full of troubles and anxious in its sleep. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Where the wandering water gushes from the hills above Glen Carr, in pools among the rushes that scarce could bathe a star. We seek for slumbering trout, and whispering in their ears, give them unquiet dreams. Leaning softly out from ferns that drop their tears over the young streams. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Away with us he's going, the solemn-eyed, He'll hear no more the lowing of the calves on the warm hillside, or the kettle on the hob sing peace into his breast, or see the brown mice bob round and round the oatmeal chest. For he comes, the human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than he can understand. I'd like to invite Rick, Alan's brother, to come forward and to do some sharing.
First, Alan is the second oldest of a family of 4 boys. I'm the youngest, Rydberg. My name is Richard, but you can call me Rick. Alan's parents were Edith, who was born in Sweden and immigrated to America in 1922, to where the streets were paved in gold. She came to an uncle. My father, Herbert Knut, was born in the U.S. to Swedish parents. There are 4 boys, John, Alan, Malcolm, and Richard. Growing up in Greenwood, Rhode Island, Alan was the best big brother you could have ever had. We did a lot of projects together. One of the best project was my dad had made a push cart for me just to go down hills by gravity. And after my dad died in 1958, I was 8 years old. Alan got a lawnmower engine for this push cart that was actually to put on my grandmother's 40-year-old ironing board. And we needed back wheels to turn. You have to have an axle. And we didn't have a lot of money, so we ended up, we had gotten a new rotary lawnmower, and we took the old push lawnmower that had an axle to turn, put a pulley on it, and then we needed a clutch. And there are things called centrifugal clutches, but they cost money. So Alan designed a clutch of hinges. And this thing, all it did is it took the engine and just tilted it up and tightened the V-belt. And that's your clutch. We don't need a brake. Okay? And then you hook this up with a couple of pulleys and a lever. And you push the stick forward and down the road you go. And it was just so much fun. I mean, it's just about the best toy. Of course you drove on the roads, which is illegal, but you also could go over to parking lots. That would be the legal thing to do, but we did both. Alan helped me build a tree house with no tree. Alan taught me how to make loud noises with acetylene gas and oxygen on a gas stove. Alan made a 6-foot kite out of fishnet and newspaper. Alan designed hot air balloons. When Alan got older, his first motorcycle was a 1949 Indian Chief with a suicide clutch. After that, he had others. He had other motorcycles, but one of the ones I remember best was the Yamaha YD3 250. It was a 2-stroke motorcycle, which means there's a lot of smoke. And in the good old days, you went to the registry, said, of course I can ride a motorcycle, give me a license, and you got one. And I still have my motorcycle license. And being in high school, having a motorcycle was great. I mean, there was a poem I wrote about a skirt flying on my Yamaha. And what I like to do is, and my closing is, one of the most favorite places we ever went is a place, it's now called Big River Management Area. But when we were kids, my third cousin's father built a house, and I was told he dammed up some streams, created a pond, okay, built a steam bath, had a porch, an outdoor porch, So here was a place that you could go and swim in the winter, swim in the summer, take steam baths. I think we even did one. We did one once in the winter, and then jumped in the lake. We only did that once. But it just was a great, great place to grow up. Back then, we just said, let's go to either Jaeger's, that's my cousin's name, or Aunt Ruth's. We grew up with two third cousins, Albert and Bobby. And what I wanted to point out, if you ever want to go there, it was taken over by the state of Rhode Island. They were supposed to build a reservoir there, and the house was supposed to be under 80 feet of water. That never happened. They did come in and the state burned the house down at one point. But it's here, it's called, I don't even know the name of the pond. We didn't call it, we just called it go to Jaeger's, but they call it Cape Well Pond, and it's at the intersection of Route 3, Division Street, and it's on a road, it's called Burnt Sawmill Road. It's still there. It's open to the public. Enjoy. It's an absolutely beautiful place. I guess Dan's next.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to help celebrate Alan's life. So little did I know when I first met Alan, when I was 9 years old, the night he arrived to take my mom out for a date. She can tell you a funny story about that. I'm not going to tell it. How much he became a part of my life. How much he would become a part of my life. At first, I wasn't thrilled about having a second dad. But Alan was gracious, patient, and generous, even out the gate. He couldn't help it against me, and he didn't. And he really turned out to be my dad. The best dad anyone could have ever had. Excuse me. He helped in all the ways that dads do. The little things that dads do. Like working with me tirelessly to learn my multiplication tables. Not that it helped much in my case. Thank you. Teaching me how to drive, how to check the oil and maintain a car, and I'm still glad living in Europe that he taught me how to drive a stick shift rather than an automatic. But really it was all the talks and time that we had together. When I was in high school, we commuted from Sterling, Connecticut to Providence each day where I was going to high school. I always look forward to that time together every day. It was the best part of every day. Listening to public radio, discussing the news and world affairs, and then other days going to the beach together and Block Island. It's not the big events in life that builds trust and love. It's the countless small interactions where you really learn about someone and their heart. But Alan was there for the big ones too. Visiting me in Dublin when I was a student there with my mom, and then coming down to New York repeatedly when I bought my house there to help me. Alan was like a rock. No matter what challenge or situation I had in life, he was always, always affirming. It'll work out, he'd say, just give it time. And he never said it in a dismissive way. Sometimes I get really irritated and say, don't worry, it'll be okay. I kind of feel like they're just trying to change the subject or something. But he said it with real compassion, real meaning. And that makes all the difference when someone gives you that kind of advice. And he always told me, stick to your knitting. It seemed like an odd expression coming from Alan, given he was not interested in sewing or any domestic tasks. I was always amused to hear him talk about how when he was in college, he would just open the top of a can of food and put it on the stove and heat it up that way to avoid making a pot. And then he'd put his dishes in the fridge to avoid washing them. But that's the engineer in him. But I learned to understand what he meant by that saying. Don't stretch yourself too thin. Don't try to do too much. Focus on what you're good at. Focus on the task at hand. Alan always gave really good advice and very practical advice, whether it's about repairing your car or fixing things in your life. I remember once when I was an undergraduate that something embarrassing happened to one of my professors during class. It was actually a summer course here at URI. I told Alan about it that evening, and I said, how can that guy possibly come back and face all the students tomorrow? And Al said, well, what is he going to do? Quit his job? And that was a reality check that I've always remembered in my life when something challenged or even embarrassing happened, that Alan would say, well, what are you going to do? What's the practical thing? Alan was very smart, even brilliant, but he was also humble and open to learning new things. For years, we discussed racism in the United States. As a tall, pale, white, blue-eyed, blonde, Swedish-haired male, and a very handsome one, I think it was hard for him to fully understand what it could be like to be in a different body in this country. I'm not a person of color, but as a queer woman in a fat body my whole life, I have plenty of my own experiences. But when he got arrested at Occupy Wall Street, he saw firsthand how people of color were treated by the police in New York City. And he saw how they were treated in the court system. When he came back, he was indignant about what he saw, and he really understood the fairness of how people of color and many other people in this country are treated after seeing it with his own eyes. Not everyone is open to this kind of humility and learning in this way. It was also inspiring for me that Alan got arrested at Occupy Wall Street. I'm not going to tell that whole story right now, but the underlying principle is that Alan saw that people's constitutional rights were not being respected. They were being violated, in fact, against the law by the police in New York City. And that was so upsetting for him that he was willing to take action, even at his own risk. Even though it was impulsive and daring, it makes it all the more endearing and inspiring for me. Until the end, Alan cared deeply about people. He cared about his family, my mom, very, very much. He loved her so much. He cared about me and my brother. He cared about his three brothers and their family. But he also cared about people at large. He went out and protested at the School of the Americas. He was involved actively for years in 9/11 Architects and Engineers for Truth. As an engineer, it really bothered him. He talked to me about it at length, even showing me the videos numerous times, that it was officially said that Building 7 collapsed. It was an insult to him as an engineer because he was very sure watching the video footage that that was a demolition and the building would not have collapsed that way. He was always eager to talk with people about artificial sweeteners like asparaginine, how healthy they are. And it was upsetting for him how the US government allowed chemicals that could be harmful to people, including dangerous chemicals in clothing and upholstery. In the last 10 years or so, he became passionate about making his own bread and even grinding his own flour. If he'd ever wanted to start a second business, he would have given Daddy's Bread some real competition. I'm sorry, I know it's going on, but I'm almost done. When I came out to him about 30 years ago, he was not happy about it. I said to him, Alan, I thought you'd be happy for me that I finally came out. And he said, and he still had a stutter at that time, he said, that's like telling me you're going to cut your hands off and that I should be happy for you. And I said, Alan, that's a really odd thing to tell a lesbian. I don't think he got the joke. But anyway, as usual, Alan rose to the occasion. Even though he was really concerned about what my life would be like as an out queer person in this world, he still loved and supported me completely. And he came to love my two long-term partners, Martha, who's here by the way, and then Uma. He was very upset when Martha and I broke up, and then he has also loved Uma completely. He made both of them welcome in our home and our family. Al was very intelligent and passionate, but he never told people what to do. He never criticized people or attacked their views. And he was also surprisingly funny for a geeky engineer kind of guy. You might not have expected that, but he had a really great sense of humor and also could be really silly. It was a delight for me to see him being silly with my mom. Even in the last year when he really wasn't feeling well, he still kept a sense of humor. I'm looking to see if I should cut some things. I didn't realize it was going to take so long to read this. Okay. He was very practical, and he knew how to build and repair just about anything. He helped me buy my house in Brooklyn, even coming down for the closing, which was very supportive given how daunting it was to be making such a big commitment and signing all those papers. And then he came down regularly to help with repairs, like fitting in a new light fixture or repairing the boiler. And then we'd go for burgers or steak dinner and walk the High Line together on the West Side. He'd also come down for events he wanted to attend, including political meetings such as 9/11 Truth. Alan and I both shared a love of New York City. It was really fun to find the bodega that he went to in his 20s when he lived in New York to get egg creams. It was still there on the Lower East Side. I'm so glad I lived back in New York City for 22 years, and how many times Alan came down to hang out with me there, and the love of New York City we both shared. At the same time, 3 years ago, when I decided to sell the house in Brooklyn and move back to Ireland, he was completely supportive and understanding. He said to me, "Your heart is always there. Follow your heart." But my heart will also always be here with him. I love you, Al. I miss you every day. So often I want to pick up the phone and just call you. Not to talk about anything in particular, just talk. But because I want your advice. You were an exceptional person, a man with a very good heart, generous, kind, patient, caring, and with a high level of integrity. The best dad I could have ever had. I'm so lucky and always will be. I just want to add, there's a little bit of this in the program as well, but you know I'm a masochist because I've been learning Irish for years. It's a very difficult language coming from English, but Alan's name, I want you to know, comes from the Irish word Alan. Vishay Gahalan. He was handsome, and he was a handsome man. But Alan also means beautiful. And originally, the etymology in Irish means rock and noble. So it's a perfect name for him. Alan was all of those things, a man with a beautiful soul, a noble spirit, and a rock for all who knew him. And I also would like to sing a song, and then I will step down from the podium. This is a song I wrote about 4 years ago, but I want to dedicate it today to Alan, and I hope I can sing given how the state that I'm in. But it's called Earthly Home. Whoa, flesh and bones. Whoa, flesh and bones. Whoa, flesh and bones. You're my only earthly home. I am of the earth and sea. Each day I must eat. And like the birds and bees, rest my head each night to sleep. Whoa, flesh and bones. Whoa, flesh and bones. Whoa, flesh and bones. You're my only earthly home. And I'm also of the stars, a bit of carbon from afar. So I climb the mountain peaks and yearn to cross the open seas. Whoa, flesh and bones. Whoa, flesh and bones. Whoa, flesh and bones. You're my only earthly home. Each of us a mystery, feet of clay and divinity. So I thank thee, soul and lungs, to walk the earth and sing this song. Whoa, flesh and bones. Whoa, flesh and bones. Whoa, flesh and bones. You're my only earthly home. So let me sing a prayer for green earth and open air. May we walk the earth with ease, and all beings live in peace. Whoa, flesh and bones. Whoa, flesh and bones. Whoa, flesh and bones. You're my only earthly home.
This is my daughter, and I'm so proud of her. And you know, she's done all this wonderful planning, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, Dr. Stone.
Me and Ricky and Charlotte, it would be very hard to organize this without these two partners in crime. Not my preferred way to get to hang out with them more, but anyway, who's next? Honey, I forget.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, John.
I'm Alan's older brother, John. Thank you all for coming out to this service to remember him. And thank you, Reverend Sherman, for allowing us to have this space to remember my brother. Alan was born August 3rd, 1941 in Providence.
Second.
Now you are corrected.
August 2nd, August 2nd.
Excuse me?
The second.
Thank you. August 2nd. And Phyllis certainly knows this. Okay. In the Providence. I got Providence right. Herbert Rydberg and Edith Lundberg Rydberg. They lived in Greenwood, in the Greenwood section of Warwick, and that's where he grew up. He attended Warwick public schools for his young life, and he was particularly good at math. In fact, he was the smartest guy in our family. There's no question about that. After public school, he applied and was accepted at the University of Rhode Island, which is certainly better than I did. You or I wanted nothing to do with me, but Alan, they accepted. Alan was very good with his hands. He took two old motorcycles and rebuilt them into one working motorcycle. When we were even younger than that, he took an old lawnmower motor and my grandmother's ironing board and made a go-kart of it that we used to drive up and down the street in. That is really my memory of my brother Alan. Then our ways parted. We were apart for a long time, but years later we got back together again. The biggest problem Alan had to overcome was that he had a speech impediment, a stutter. Is Peter Anderhagen here? Yeah. Stand up, Peter, please. That man, Peter, he got Alan through URI. Alan would have failed public speaking, which was a required course, and not graduated, had not Peter been there for him. Alan told me this many years later. So, as you can see, I certainly appreciate what Peter did. All of his life, he worked as an engineer in various places. If you've read his obituary, you know a little bit about that. He really, I think, should have been more than an engineer, but that was it. But then he made the best decision he ever made. He married, not only did he marry Phyllis Seelan, but he acquired two stepchildren, Dion, who you've already heard from, and Stephen. And I think among the three of them, marrying Phyllis and getting his two grandchildren, Stephen and Dan, was the very best thing that happened to him in all of his life. And he had very many good years with them. The last time I saw him was last October in a party at Richards. And he told me about his condition, and he told me exactly how serious it was. And I certainly believe, it made sense and I believed him, but somehow I did not expect to be standing here today remembering him. But I am. That is, for all of us, I guess, what life often comes to. All of the people here seem to be well, not quite all, but many seem to be more or less Alan's age. So, those are the few words I can say to my brother, and I myself am very happy to be able to give this few words to remember him.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
My name's Steve. Not really in a speaking mode today. It's funny because with Al, I got a second dad, I got a friend. And think about all the things that was interest to Alan, that going over memories of him, I started realizing how much he influenced me in many of my interests. And I started just going over the things that I think everybody else that loves him has already brought up many good topics about him. But things pop in my head because I'm the same. My grandfather, my mom's dad, and Alan and myself are not like most people. We think about the dimensions of things that most people don't even comprehend. When you love motorcycling and boats and cars and airplanes, machinery, and electricity, and science and physics, and what this world is created of. Most people take a lot of things for granted, and they don't even think about it. But all of these things have become really important in my life, and I realized part of each little bit of these, from Alan showing and teaching me photography at a ridiculously young age and developing pictures. As I went into high school and they just started a photography program, I was actually helping my teacher teach the class because I was already a master photographer and developer, and that's all because of Alan and his darkroom. I never was a wrench turner. I love engineering and science, and I would watch Alan take nuts and bolts apart, and I'm like, I remember all this goes back together. And he's like, just put it out in order. As you take it apart, you put it back together. And As we got older, we definitely didn't agree on our political views, from extreme liberalism to at one time extreme conservatorianism, but we would sit and discuss, and I would try to pry his mind. And many liberals seem to have a problem with discussing and opening their minds and understanding the opposite point of view. But as he got older, I felt really good, because sometimes he'd get upset, but sometimes he'd like, wow, you got a point here. You made me look at something different. I said, that's the whole reason I'm talking to you. I'm hoping to get enlightened from you, your wisdom, and your other point of view. So many people from so many different places, so many different experiences. It's hard to look through other people's eyes and relate with people to understand. And I think Alan will help me look at society like that. We talked about conspiracy theories, and I worked for the government my whole life for national defense, and I, have a strong patriotism towards this country. And we'd have multiple discussions about 9/11 and how and why that happened. And I think as Alan got older, he came out of his shell, and we connected a lot better talking and things. I think about some things with him. He was always so not really outgoing. You had to get his attention, light his fire to get him going. But once you got him going, it was good. But he had a lot of dimensions I don't think a lot of people saw. His skills, his knowledge, and all the things that interested him in life are a lot of things I think a lot of people don't look at. And he was a great man, and I think he'll be missed for a long time by all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen.
Hello, I'm Carol Anderhagen. In the late 1960s and early 70s, I was a young mother with 2 lovely daughters and a husband who met the most interesting people. Al was a friend of my husband's who became my friend also. He spent a lot of time with us when we were in New York City and was always a soft-spoken, lovely human being. As we know, he was a genius with mechanical items and very much had the mind of an inventor. One such invention he brought to us in the late 1960s was fascinating. He told us it was an ozone generator, which would freshen and clean the air. I don't think he patented it. But I do know that ozone generators are what hotels now use to get the tobacco smell out of a hotel room. And as an aside, I don't have this written down, but the day that I found out that Al had passed away, I was in Florida in a B&B, which I had stunk up with overheating a sweet potato in a microwave, the whole B&B filled with smoke. And the owner had to go buy an ozone generator, and he brought it in. And I thought, what an amazing coincidence that was. When we moved to Rhode Island, we kept in touch, and he would visit often, mostly by himself. He very graciously included our little family in his Swedish family's Christmas Eve dinners. They are the fondest memories I have of those days. His mother was a wonderful cook, serving us marvelous, marvelous Swedish meals on those Christmas Eves so long ago. Eventually, I started having tree trim parties at Christmas time, and one of the last times I remember Al visiting was when he brought a girlfriend whose name was Phyllis. We didn't have much money in those days, but what we did have was construction paper and gold paint. And his date, Phyllis, made a lovely, lovely lavender paper angel, which she adorned with beautiful gold hair and gold trim on her bodice. That simple little paper angel is the most treasured of our family's Christmas decorations to this day. Well, life moved on. My husband and I went our separate ways and we moved on. Al and Phyllis became a couple and they moved on. And around 5 or 6 years ago, Kate Okula, a poet friend of mine, took me to a potluck that her Buddha group was having. After about a half an hour, who walked into the house but Al? And that's when I discovered I was in his house. So of course I found Phyllis and reintroduced myself to her. Kate had kept me updated about Al ever since that point, even through the really tough times at the end of his life. When Kate told me she'd gotten him over to the emergency room at South County Hospital, I immediately sent him an email telling him I was glad Kate had been able to help him and I hoped he was doing better. And here is the simple beauty of the human being that he was. He replied, and I quote, "Quite simply, Carol, you and Peter were the best people I ever had in my life." End quote. And that says far more about Al than it does about Peter and me. Yeah, Al was an extra special human being, and though we didn't hang around a lot together in much of our life, I will miss knowing that Al is alive and well in this world.
Amen.
But I have no doubt his spirit will live on in all who knew him. Thank you.
Amen to that. Thank you, Carol. Amen. Sorry.
He's a nerd.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This little note that I'm going to speak from is about a relationship between me and Alan that lasted many, many years, actually about 60 years. I was a graduate student at the University of Rhode Island teaching public speaking. Al was in the class and had a rather profound stutter. We worked privately outside of class, and the stutter and made some significant progress. We became friends, and we did not lose contact with one another for all these 60 years. I moved to New York City and did some psychotherapy. The next thing I knew, Al was in New York and in therapy. We became like brothers, always connected, if not always closely connected. Sometimes several years would pass without any visits, and then we would get together. I wish I had seen another day, seeing one another more often. We did get together at his mother's house for holiday dinners several times. I wrote that I was Al's teacher. With his passing, I learned a profound lesson. Treasure the people we care about and who care about us. They are treasures, so treat them as such. Pay as much attention to them as you do to your bank account. Al was a treasure, and I miss him every day. Why do I say that Al was a treasure? He was a profoundly inquisitive person, both scientifically and spiritually. And he was both scientifically and spiritually engaged. He would often send me emails describing his latest research. He was very gentle and very generous.
He was caring of his family and dearly caring of his wonderful wife, Phyllis. Thank you, Al. I will miss you every day.
Amen. Thank you, Peter. Your gifts. Thank you for your gifts. My turn.
Yep, your turn.
Your turn. You sure it's my turn? What, are you gonna read another letter from,
No, Beth's gonna read Elizabeth Dunn's letter after you go.
you wanna do that first? No, you do it first.
So this is a reflection from Elizabeth Dunn and from the Dunn family. It must have been somewhere around 1975-ish when I first met Alan. It was the day before Thanksgiving when the blue Dodge Dart pulled into the driveway next to our farmhouse in Leamington, Maine. Alan, Phyllis, Stephen, and Dean had come from Rhode Island to visit for the first of many Thanksgivings together. My brother Peter and I had waited in quiet vigil for our guests to arrive, reclining in lawn chairs close to the main road that passed by the front of the house. From our spot underneath the fringes of a locust tree grove that dotted the still green side lawn, we had watched each approaching vehicle go whizzing by, anticipating that the next car would certainly be the one. While Mom and Dad were still in the house, Peter and I approached everyone from our perch. The driver was a new smiling face. It was Alan. Alan was an immediate welcome addition to our friendship of families that began around 1967 in Cranston on Haddon Hill Road. Since moving to Maine in '72, it had been a few years since we had seen our close neighbors and best friends, Phyllis, Stephen, and Dean. Our tradition of friends as family Thanksgivings would span to other venues over the years. The House in the Woods in Leamington, Phyllis and Al's house in Sterling, and the farmhouse in Dayton, Maine. Us kids were usually too busy with other matters to pay much attention to the adult conversations going on. But I do remember some snippets, like the time Alan and Dad were talking about Al's glider pilot excursions. How cool I had thought to be flying like a bird, rather daring yet natural at the same time. Now I reminisce of Al's certain focus, aeronautical know-how, and confidence of character to pursue such adventures. Having been a machine designer engineer, Dad recently reminded me of how he liked to talk shop with Alan. Discussing the details and intricacies of Al's old Saab with a 3-cylinder engine was one example. Motorcycles was another. Both shared the curious and creative mind of science and invention, and amidst their casual and keen conversations, I often overheard lively banter. And what were these newfangled computers that Al tinkered with? And the fascination of fractals. Yet another exciting discovery. I think Al knew computers were going to be a thing before they were a thing. And then there was one summer when Peter and I had stayed with Phyllis, Al, Stephen, and Dean at their Providence home. My memories are fuzzy for how long we were there, perhaps a week, probably more. Yet I clearly remember the first time I heard Alan call Phyllis Billy in the kitchen. That was so sweet and dear. I noticed a playful hint in Al's smile and a sparkle in his eye. The last Thanksgiving gathering was in 2004 at Peter and Diane's farmhouse in Dayton. My husband John and I had traveled from Montana to attend too. It was another happy, long weekend event of great food, fun conversation, and time to reconnect and catch up on things. At some point, I remember festive loud music filling the house from Peter's impressive sound system. Maybe it was the wine, beer, or a casual, relaxed atmosphere, or all of the above. But many of us just started dancing in the kitchen, then the living room. In his watchful reserve and wry smile, Alan must have thought we were all crazy for being so goofy, all the while tapping his foot to the catchy beat. Even though it's been years since our Thanksgiving visits, Phyllis, Stephen, and Dean, and Alan, if you can hear this, you all still feel like family to me across the miles, a timeless connection that prevails. I was so saddened to hear of Alan's passing. I will always remember that he was kind, gentle, a super smart genius, funny, thoughtful, generous, patient, a very wise and compassionate man. I feel very fortunate and honored to have known him. I celebrate the good memories that Alan shared with all of us.
This is not only my time to share with you, but anyone else who would like to come up and say a word too. So if anyone else would like to come up now and share, come on up. Because I'm going to read something first, and then I'm going to ask you all to do something. Come on up, Linda. This is a good friend, Linda, who misses Al a lot.
Just a couple of things. When my husband died a few years ago, I started playing board games with Phyllis and Al once a week, and so I got to know him almost as well as Phyllis, and very much enjoyed having a scientist to talk to. Just a couple of things. He was so reliable in terms of like taking care of prevention, taking care of his house. It felt good being there because there were great air filters and the top of the line, best sort of air filters. And he took care of his well, he neutralized it, he made distilled water instead of the well. He got rid of a couch because it was made during the time they put flame retardants in. They're really bad for your health. And one of the big ones was the soap. There's emulsifiers in the soap that cause Alzheimer's.
I'm never going to get Alzheimer's.
I probably am. They're in soap detergents. So he went and got the old-fashioned soap detergents, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to point that out. He was just so pleasant to be with and to talk to intelligently about science.
Hi, I'm Zoe, and I'm from the St. Peter by the Sea Church, and I got to meet Brother Allen at the church, and what a wonderful, wonderful family with I always say my mother, that's what, and I know sometimes she said, but I'm like, most beautiful family that I've ever asked for. I felt almost like he was a father to me because I remember we talked about the bread, and I heard his daughter talking about the bread, and I was like, yeah, I remember, because I was trying to bake bread, and I said, I have no patience of waiting for 4 hours just to get a bread made. And I remember he said, well, I can teach you how to make a bread in 30 minutes. And I said, ooh, okay. And I said to Phyllis, I said, I'm coming over so that, Mr. Allen can teach me how to make the bread. And sure, we had the bread made in 30 minutes and had to put some butter on it. And it was just so kind of him. I just want to say I don't have anything else to say because everybody has said exactly who he is. And truly, I got to meet a wonderful father, a wonderful friend, a kind and gentle soul. And I can't say any more than to say it was such a pleasure to meet him, and such heartfelt sadness to lose him as well. But again, I do have a mother, aunt, and a friend beside me who is just as loving as I've met his family, his daughter, and his son. And I want to say thank you all. It's nice sharing your dad with me. Thank you.
Anyone else? How about Malcolm? Would you like to say something, Malcolm? Not at this time, okay. Martha, you want to come up? Come on, anyone wants to come up, coming up now. So
Hi,
get in line.
I'm Martha, former significant other of Dean, Al's daughter. So during our relationship, I got to know Al and Phyllis and Stephen. But I would also run into Al by himself at, as Dean mentioned, big demonstrations against war in Washington, D.C. And I think the last time I saw Al was when I took the bus from Detroit, where I was living at the time, to Fort Benning, Georgia, to demand the School of the Americas be closed. And who did I run into there? Al. He had taken the bus with the peace group all the way from here down to Georgia. Pretty much every big demonstration, even with so many people there, I could pretty much plan that somehow or another I would run into Al. One time I was in D.C., I was doing security in front of the stage, and we kind of had our hands linked to protect the notables that were speaking, but along comes Al, I had to let go, get one of those big hugs that he was good for. So, rest in power, Al.
Thanks, Martha. Anybody else who wants to speak, come on up now. Wherever, hold your peace.
Just sitting here with all these wonderful, wonderful people that love Al. I'm grateful to be able to be here from my home in Hawaii, and so grateful for the privilege of having Phyllis and Al as close friends. We got to go cruising together. We got to go to Iceland together, and we just had so many wonderful times together. When I came back to Rhode Island, my hometown, to help out with my mother, I got to meet the most wonderful people here at Al and Phyllis, and Al always so generous, so thoughtful, so helpful. When my car broke down, he was right there. I could use his car for a while. He's just a wonderful, wonderful man. He'll always be with me. And I just wrote this when I got here, and I just said blessings to this family as the Spirit in each of us grows in the divinity of love as we gather together, friends and relatives and all the dear ones that remember and love Al, who will always be with us with great memories. From my husband, John, and I, Grace Eileen.
Thanks, Grace. What happened to it?
I was going to speak from the chair.
Oh, that's all right.
My name is Bob. I'm a member of the Peace and Social Justice Group that Alan was a member of,
And what about me?
and Phyllis. I was sitting in the back row, and from my viewpoint, I saw Alan here on the table under the altar. And I'm reminded that John Hall, who many of you know, the minister here for years, was the founder of the Peace and Social Justice Group, of which Alan was a member. So there's indeed a connection. Alan was, to me, a real seeker of lots of things in life we don't think about, not just science. An inquisitive guy and engaging and oftentimes challenging. He was as tough on liberals as he was on conservatives, and he had a different way of thinking and projecting his passions in life. He was a splendid man.
Thanks, Bob. Come on. No, but it's a good time. This is another wonderful friend of ours that I hadn't met before, so I'm glad that he came today. You will explain yourself to it.
It's a great day for flying. I met Al in probably 1998 when I joined the Danielson Soaring Association. At the time, the club was maybe 6 or 8 members, and Al was one of them. In fact, I believe Al was a charter member of that organization, a group of people that purchased a glider and formed a glider club. At that time, they were a pretty disjointed group. They occasionally flew on weekends. I came in as a greenhorn student pilot hoping to learn how to fly gliders, and I joined the club with Al. I could tell right away Al was one of the workers. He was a hard worker helping that club go. But he didn't want to get involved in the politics of the club. But he loved being out on the field, and he loved being there in the mix of the action and helping make that operation go. And it was great to be a part of that. And I quickly learned how smart he was and how interesting of a person he was. In, I think, I'm going to say 2003 or 4, I became president of the club after being in the club a few years, and Al was vice president. Even though still he didn't want to be involved in the politics of the club. But I came to rely on him so much for his inputs and his thoughts and the way he thought about things to help that club. I left the state of Connecticut in 2005 for a couple years, and I had to leave the club. At that point, the club was down to 4 members. They were struggling. They didn't own a tow plane. They relied on one of the members who owned a Cessna to come out on weekends to tow us. And he didn't always want to come out. And then we had to have, out of 4 members, you had to have enough people on the field to have an operation, to move the glider around and such. So I left the state and not knowing what I'd come back to 2 years later, but I looked up Al and I went and joined the club, and there were the 4 members still struggling along here with this. I was voted back in as president again. Yeah, mixed feelings there. But Al was there for me. And from that point on, within a year, we purchased our first golf cart, a vehicle that we could tow the glider around on the ground. Al maintained that golf cart almost weekly, because it was a derelict of a cart we got for, I forget, $800 or something. Smoking and hardly starting, but Al kept it going for us. And from that point, then we bought a storage shed. And we convinced the state of Connecticut we could install this storage shed on their airport, which had never been done before. And of course, Al was there with his Saab, backed up with the hatch open and all his tools to assemble the shed for us. And he worked hard to get that all assembled. So from that point on, the club grew. And by 2012, that club had 40 members. And as of this day, that club now owns 4 gliders. 2 trainer gliders, 2 single-place gliders. And we purchased a tow plane. So that club, because of Al's hard work, I am so grateful for all the work that Al was always the first guy on the field. He was always the guy out there setting things up. He worked hard. I was fortunate to travel with him to Arizona. I go frequently out there to fly. And I have some footage I hope you're going to enjoy watching later of Al's flights. Now, Al was a perpetual student pilot for a long time. When you're a glider pilot, you first solo, and then you go on to get your private glider license where you can carry passengers. He soloed several times at Danielson, but it was this trip out to Arizona where he finally received his private glider license. And I was so proud to be there that day when he took those qualification flights with an FAA examiner to make that happen. So, Al, soar high.
Thank you so much.
Phyllis. Yeah.
Thank you, God bless you.
Thank you for sharing the pictures. You're welcome.
Oh, Linda wants to say one more thing, Linda.
Just one more thing, another side to Al that I forgot to mention, that many years ago there were those uprisings in New York, protests and everything, and the cops were being pretty brutal with people. And Al didn't see any cops around. He saw the cop's car, and he flattened the tires. And unfortunately, there was a plainclothes woman cop right there, and he got arrested and spent 3 days in jail.
Just one night.
No, it
Oh,
was
it was
three.
just one
It was
night?
more than one night, it was 2 nights at least.
Phyllis told me to tell you.
It was a long time.
In any event, many people thought he was a hero. I don't think his wife did, but I thought it was great.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks, Linda.
Well, I just wanted to
Oh, come on up
go
here,
along
Michael.
with just a really quick story.
A quick story?
Yeah, it'll be fast.
I know.
Hi, I'm Martin Lukowski with the Peace and Justice Group on Tuesdays. John Hall, our brother, Mary B. Great to see you here today. Real quick, what Bob was saying, how much Al meant to us on Tuesdays, and real quickly, when the children, the immigrant children, were being separated from their parents on the border and put in cages, Alan was incensed with that, and he called me up. He said, Martin, we got to do an action. I said, oh God, here we go. And he heard about this group home in Connecticut that was housing some of these children. They were being taken away, put in different states. And I said, Alan, what are we going to do? And I'm driving up. Says, we're going to make a citizen's arrest. I don't even know what that meant, but we were going to do a citizen arrest. And we got up to the group home, and nobody would answer the door. And Alan and I, we circled this house for like a half hour. And we got back in the car and we drove home. But it says something about Al and his compassion. His compassion, and that mix of a scientist and compassion, you don't oftentimes see. You know, it's one or the other. But to have that mix was tremendous. And then just the last thing, I was with my dear girlfriend Jackie, who just passed away a while ago, and we used to go on for the walk on the beach in South Kingstown here. And we were walking back, and there was an automobile parked in the parking lot. And who's there? The seats are pulled back. I look into the car, and there's Phyllis and her dear husband Al resting together in the most peaceful way in this automobile. I didn't have the heart to knock. I just looked in, and rest in peace, both of you, now and then.
Forever. Amen.
Amen.
Last chance. Anybody have the last chance? Oh my gosh. I'm a little overwhelmed with everything, but my niece has sent another little letter, wanted to recognize Al. So my niece Jeannie Woodrick, it was in Alabama, writes, never give up on your dreams. Your heart will take you there. Uncle Al, you'll always be my mad scientist. I will always cherish our times together at the beach. Thank you for supporting my art. I will miss your smile so much. And she says, peace be with you, Uncle Al. So now I'm going to ask all of you, please, to get up and pass the peace with each other. Would you do me that honor? Would you please do me that honor for me? Because there's nothing more important.
My own, everybody's well.
Peace, Roy. So I would ask you to regather if we could. If we could regather, please. It's like Sunday morning. If we could please regather.
Okay.
We will be able to continue our conversation downstairs in just a few minutes. We have a few prayers to share and also a portion of a psalm, all of which Phyllis chose and wanted to be sure that we included in today's service. So please hear these words of comfort from the 91st Psalm. Those who dwell in the shelter of infinite light, who abide in the wings of infinite love, will raise their voices in praise. My refuge and my strength, in you alone will I trust. For you deliver me from the webs of fear and illusion, from all that separates and divides. You protect me as an eagle shields its young. Your faithfulness is sure, like an arrow set upon the mark. I will not fear the shadows of the night, nor the confusion that comes by day, nor the dreams that awaken me from sleep, nor the daily changes that life brings. Let us pray. Gracious God, whose wisdom is beyond our understanding, deal graciously with Alan's family in their grief. Surround them with your love, that they may not be overwhelmed by their loss, but have confidence in your goodness and strength to meet the days to come. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And Phyllis wrote this prayer in honor of Alan.
I did? What prayer was that?
You did. You handed it to me and I typed it up.
I think that was the prayer for Indian prayer.
No, that's coming after. You'll remember it once we get into it. Jesus has asked us to walk with him in peace, faith, hope, and love. When love is missing, life, which includes so many ups and downs, is hard to bear. Today, oh God, let love embrace us all as the dear soul of Alan departs to a better place this day and always. Amen. It's beautiful. And finally, this Native American prayer. I give you this one thought to keep. I am with you still. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not think of me as gone. I am with you still in each new dawn. So, in closing, we are going to sing Be Thou My Vision, and I would ask you to stand as you are able. And then when we are finished with the hymn, I invite you to go downstairs for the reception. And Rod is going to play, because we're not using the hymnal, he is going to play through the complete tune. But please stand. The words are in your bulletin.
Be
know the address.
Oh, really?
So I got it to him. Oops.
Oh, Steve?